The history of the All-Star Game starts much like the history of the NBA, with the Boston Celtics asserting their dominance. In a meeting involving NBA President Maurice Podoloff, NBA Publicity Director Haskell Cohen, and the Boston Celtics owner Walter Brown, the idea of an exhibition game involving the 24 best players in the NBA was formed. Many around the NBA world thought that copying the MLB in this way would be a flop, and Walter Brown actually offered to cover the expenses and the losses from this game. However, a game between the 24 best basketball players in the world was actually a success. Who knew? The very first All-Star Game was held in, surprise, the Boston Garden on March 2nd, 1951. And the All-Star Game MVP was Ed Macauley of, surprise, the Boston Celtics. Over the years, the All-Star Game has been a landmark in each NBA season, except during the 1999 season after the lockout. It was originally canceled for 2021, but Adam Silver and the NBA decided to play one in Atlanta, of all places, an idea opposed by many. One of the most notable All-Star Games was in 1964, a game forever labeled as the Strike. After tumultuous labor talks with the NBA owners, the All-Stars decided to sit out the game, which was the first one to be nationally broadcasted. This was one of the first steps towards player empowerment, as the NBA actually agreed to the terms the players presented. Another All-Star game that I found interesting was the ABA All-Star Game in 1976, but for different reasons than the Strike. At the time, the ABA was struggling to keep up with the NBA and decided to change up their All-Star Game a bit, bringing some flair to the struggling association. At the All-Star break, the two teams that played were the Denver Nuggets and the ABA All-Stars. The Nuggets were selected to play the All-Stars because they had the best record at the time, and they actually ended up beating the ABA All-Stars behind David Thompson. The All-Stars that year included Artis Gilmore, Julius Erving, and George Gervin. There have been many great individual performances as well, such as Magic Johnson in his first All-Star Game after coming out of retirement, and Michael Jordan's triple-double at the All-Star Game in 1997 after the NBA released its list of the top 50 all-time players. One of the greatest All-Star Game performances came from Allen Iverson in 2001, the year he won MVP and led the 76ers to the finals. Iverson scored 15 points in the last 9 minutes of the game and led an Eastern Conference comeback in a 1-point victory. Only 6 players have won 3 or more All-Star Game MVPs, as you can see. Before the rule change, the East had won more All-Star Games than the West, 37-29, even though the East had only won 6 in the 21st century. The Lakers lead the way with 11 All-Star Game MVPs, and the Celtics are second with 8. Ever since the beginning, the NBA All-Star Game was a means for showing off and getting buckets. For instance, the average points scored each game for teams in 1951 was 83, but the final score for the first All-Star Game ever that year was 111-94. As Wikipedia puts it, quote, gameplay usually involves players attempting spectacular slam dunks and alley-oops, and defensive effort is usually limited. And for years that was a problem. There was no incentive for players to actually be competitive like we see in the regular season and the postseason. Back when the All-Star Game was first formed, players' contracts were not fully guaranteed, and the winning All-Star team would be awarded some financial bonus. Now, it's hard to incentivize multi-millionaires with $50K, the reward for players on a winning team now. There will always be guys like Kobe and Draymond Green who simply reach nirvana by just competing. But for every one guy like that, there will be scores of guys like Shaq and Dwight Howard who are mostly there for a good time and don't feel that putting in 110% is necessary or worth it. There's nothing wrong with either group, but the latter group makes it near impossible to have a successful three-point contest and skills challenge. That and the fact that nobody wants to watch anyone make a bounce pass for fun. Then, in the actual All-Star Game, most of the same problems occur. There are no stakes, and the players involved know it. And the NBA knows they can get stacks of cash whether it is a great game or not, just because of the names that are involved. And because of those reasons I previously listed, the All-Star Game was in a dark place even just a mere 5 years ago. But then came Adam Silver's 2 great ideas that saved the NBA All-Star Game. First, the draft. Instead of having the West All-Stars maul the East each year, Silver implemented a draft. Each year, 2 captains, one from each conference, alternate picks and select 11 players from the pool of 22. After a couple of years of that successful change, Silver welcomed in the Elam ending last season, named after Nick Elam. The ELM ending is a method of shortening games and making them more exhilarating down the stretch by completely eliminating the clock. The basketball tournament came up with this idea mainly as a way to limit fouling. In the basketball tournament, once the clock reaches 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, a target score is established. They add 8 points to the leading team's score, and the first team to reach that score wins. For example, if Team Baby Goats was in the lead with 100 points with 4 minutes left in the game, our target score of 108 would be established, and the first team to get to 108 points would be the winner. While the NBA did duplicate this idea somewhat, they also modified it a little. At the start of the fourth quarter, the clock is completely dismissed, and 24 points, for Kobe, are added to the leading team's score. The first team to reach that score wins. For instance, in 2020, Team Giannis was winning with 133 points after 3 quarters, so the target score was 157. What this did for the All-Star Game last year was unimaginable. Because of the attachment to players lots of NBA fans feel, as well as the intensity of a close game down the stretch, the end of the All-Star Game in 2020 felt like a playoff game instead of an exhibition or a scrimmage.
I wish all 3 quarters was like this fourth quarter, though. How they're playing.
There are plenty of reasons the All-Star Weekend isn't perfect, but in the same breath, we must acknowledge and mention the strides towards greatness the event has taken over the past few years.
For more creative, informative, and high-quality sports content, make sure to follow Phenom on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as all of the Phenom podcast channels for each sport. The link tree in the episode description includes a direct link to all of the aforementioned platforms, so click on that to access everything. Phenom boasts a team of over 100 youth contributors from around the world, covering every sport on every media platform. If you are interested in potentially joining the Phenom team as a writer or content creator, send an email to cole@phenommedia.net showing your interest. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow the channel. We really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.